cruise ship or airplane, Royal Caribbean workers returning to the office, the king of Staten Island, and who are some of my favorite creators? All this and more on today's episode of the Lido Loca Cruise Show. Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the show. My name's Tony. I'm very glad to have you here. If you enjoy that cruising and travel content, please consider subscribing with the notification bell on. Well, let's jump into it. I've been getting asked a lot during this downtime, who am I watching on YouTube? Who am I reading in the blogosphere? What is my general approach to finding news, talking about travel, those kind of things? Been getting a lot of those questions. So I thought it'd be interesting over the next few episodes to highlight some creators in the space that I tend to gravitate to or that I tend to follow. First of all, let me talk a little bit about news commentary. I would classify what I do when it comes to cruise and travel news as news commentary. I'm not Edward R. Murrow. Look it up, kids. I'm not somebody that's out there digging in with the cruise lines. I'm not somebody out there behind the scenes getting the inside scoop. I am a consumer of news and then a commentator on news. And so basically that's my approach. So I'm always looking for good news sources, good people that I feel like are reliable, that are my go-to people. Now, when it comes to watching YouTube, I would be remiss if the first person I didn't mention is my friend Don Terrace. Don, very similar to me. He's got a little more insight than I do, a little more connectivity than I do. But at the end of the day, when you slide over to Don's Family Vacations, you know you're going to see Don give his opinion on what's going on in the world of cruising and travel. And I, for one, enjoy it immensely. I can't recommend Don to you guys enough. And Don has a special place for me because he's a very kind person and a very loyal person. He's my friend. And so, of course, I'm going to recommend my friend Don to you. That is one video I watch every day, is Don's offering over on Don's Family Vacation. Now, when it comes to finding out what's going on in the cruise industry, every day I go into Google, I search for cruise news, but there's one place that you know for sure you're going to get good, solid, integrity information about cruising. That is cruiseradio.net, founded by Doug Parker. It's a podcast, it's a blog, and it's about accurate news. I think Doug's tagline is the trusted voice in cruising in America. That you can't argue with that. The thing that's cool about Doug, that I know about Doug, is that he is very into making sure that information is accurate and that he's giving out the most accurate information to cruisers possible. And so a lot of the times I'll hit cruiseradio.net to see what's going on, and Doug always has the good information. So that's a podcast. That's also in the blogosphere on the internet. And there's a YouTube channel too. So you can't go wrong looking at cruiseradio.net. And then if we're thinking about stuff from a lifestyle perspective and maybe a smaller creator on the up and coming, we have friends that are close to us. We've only met them a couple times, but I do consider them friends. They've always been kind to us. I always get the sense that they are looking out for us, which is a good feeling in this space. The Degenerate Cruisers, Jason and Krista, they live about 2 hours from us. They're over, I feel like it would be Central Florida, and they've really been working hard right now to bring interesting new content. I just watched a recent video where they went to the Skyway Bridge in Tampa and broke down the history of the Skyway Bridge, and I always appreciate when people are doing something new and innovative like that, and so I have no problem recommending putting the Degenerate Cruisers into your subscription feed. I'm going to leave all these people listed in the description below. Make sure you drop their names in the YouTube search engine, check out their stuff, and subscribe if you're so inclined. So it's been interesting times here at the Lido Loca headquarters. People have asked for a peek behind the scenes. Let me give you a little insight as to what it looks like over here. Lido Loca, myself, my lovely wife, Jenny, we are content creators. We are travel agents. And I say travel agent for myself kind of loosely. I am travel agent. I've booked one cruise in my life compared to Jenny, who's booked well over 1,000 cruises. And so Jenny is the travel agent of the bunch, and she spends most of her day working on travel agent stuff, working with people. And in relation to what's going on in the world, we continue to be optimistically cautious as our state of Florida reopens. We've been watching as cases of the virus and fatalities fatalities from the virus continue to rise in Florida. We've been going out when we need to. We've been doing the precautions that have been recommended by the authorities, and we continue to stay hunkered down a little bit, again, with our eye watching what's going on, and we're looking forward to a day when things are a little more like they used to be, but we don't see it so far, and so a lot of our time is spent hunkered down at the Lido Loca headquarters here in Florida. The beautiful thing about living in Florida, most of the houses have a pool, and we were able to rent a house with a pool, so it is nice that on hot Florida days we can go jump in the swimming pool. I can't complain about that. I'm very happy to pay that money to have the swimming pool. But what's interesting is we do like to have a date night, and we haven't really had the opportunity to do that. And so last night we actually rented the movie The King of Staten Island. Now, if you're following along with what's going on in the movie industry, movies that are supposed to come out at the theater, they have been releasing straight to the streaming platforms at a premium price. And so, yes, we sat on the couch with each other last night. We paid the $20 for a rental. How about that? $20 for a rental to watch The King of Staten Island. I was particularly interested in this movie. If you don't know what it's about, it's from the comedy minds of Pete Davidson and Judd Apatow. But really, the goal of this movie was to tell Pete Davidson's story. He's a bit of a troubled guy. He's a comic in real life, bit of a troubled guy. He's a comic affected by 9/11. His dad was a firefighter. He passed away in 9/11, and this movie tries to tell that story in a way that's not directly tied to 9/11, but the story of a young kid who loses his father at a young age, and really kind of the ramifications of that. So in this movie, Pete's like a 24-year-old, and he has trouble with his life, still struggling with his dad passing away. And it's a bit of a redemption story. I don't want to give too much away, but I would highly recommend it. In my life story, my dad passed away when I was 22, and I know that seems like a good long amount of time to have your dad, but there's so many things that happen as you transition into adulthood as a man, and it's hard not having that father figure. And so for me, I really felt like I would connect to this movie, and I did. And so it's a good movie. It's a funny movie, but if you are somebody that definitely has that connection to loss at a young age, especially as like one of your parents, I think that you would find this movie poignant. So I'm going to give a thumbs up to The King of Staten Island, and I'm just going to say it was an interesting way to have a date night. Let's jump into the cruise news a little bit. Royal Caribbean workers returning to work in Miami. This is an article that I found over at the Royal Caribbean blog that is done by Matt over there. He is a fanatic when it comes to Royal Caribbean. He has a lot of inside connections. He jumped on a call that's available for travel agents and media people. Vicky Freed hosts this call. She's an executive at Royal Caribbean, and she outlined on the call the return to work for workers in Miami. Royal Caribbean's headquarters in Miami, and so now they are starting to stagger their employment force back to the office. The first workers actually started going back to the office on June 8th, just a few days ago, and then a second wave of workers will be going to the office on June the 15th. Seatrade Cruise News reports it was about 150 people that went back to work at Royal. For my part, I feel like this is probably a good story. It shows that the cruise lines are trying to get their people back to work in their locations. That means they're thinking about working and not thinking about not working. So to me, that seems like a positive story. And now to an interesting conversation that's been going on all during this pandemic. It seems like whenever anybody comes out and talks about how challenging it is for cruise ships with the virus, inevitably somebody says, well, what about them airplanes? Isn't the airplanes worse? Well, USA Today has offered an interesting article where they talked to a healthcare professional, an expert in the field. USA Today asked critical care physician from the Cleveland Clinic, Joseph Cabaza, what risk exists on different forms of travel today. He jumped right into it, echoing what many have said. Airplanes offer the most risk when it comes to travel. The airlines have done what they could to put precautions in place They've been social distancing by skipping rows, skipping chairs. They have a face cover requirement. And even with all those things in place, the reality is you're still in a metal tube with other people, strangers that you don't know. And this is one of those places where the virus can spread, and the risk of the virus spreading is heightened because of the proximity of the people. Another place where he points out where there is close proximity of people is on subways, buses, trains, that type of transportation. Another situation where social distancing can only go so far. Again, where it's hard to get away from other people, where you are in close proximity, even with face coverings, there presents a danger, a risk of traveling so close to other people, very similar to airplanes, buses, trains, subways, people on top of people, even in the best attempts to social distance. This is a form of travel that poses a risk when it comes to the pandemic. And that's where the good doctor swings away from the super risky portion of travel and starts to move to some of the safer options, highlighting things like theme parks as one of the more safer options. This is a place where things like social distancing, where facial coverings can help minimize the risk of getting the virus. Theme parks offer many outdoor spaces where people can spread out. I've watched a lot of the video of people going to the theme parks here in Florida. And like Universal, they have places where you can go take a break from your mask, a place where you can socially distance, be away from everybody else, take off your face covering. And yeah, so theme parks, one of those places where if it's managed right, if capacity is managed right, if the guidelines are adhered to, there's opportunity to be safe at the theme park. This is one of the ones that he highlighted. Now, how about cruise ships? The doctor points out that cruise ships are a place where you can isolate yourself in your cabin, where there are many public places that are open enough for social distancing, and where it's an industry that is highly looked at by health authorities, safety authorities, and where the safety of the passengers are highly visible. The safety of the passengers are a priority, and it's something that the cruise lines have done very well over the years, taking care of the health and safety. Unfortunately for the cruise lines, and he echoes it in his answers, the cruise lines got hit hard at the beginning of the virus, took a lot of negative press. Nobody really knew what to do at the beginning of the virus. I think it would be unfair to say that when all this happened and nobody knew anything about the virus, that people should have had the exact right answers. And unfortunately, the cruise ships fall into that scenario where they walked right into a storm and like everybody else didn't really know what to do. And so they've caught a lot of negative press. But if you move away from that negative press and you look at the cruising industry when it comes to health and wellness and how it's regulated and how it's looked at, this is one of those industries that those things are looked at closely. And yeah, so cruising better than airplanes. But not the most safest, not the most safest, according to Dr. Joseph Khabib. He said, if you want to be most safe on your travel this summer, you know what you should do? You should go camping. Yes, he's highlighted camping as the least risky travel option for you in the near future. So if you want to go out, you want to get out of your house, you got to learn to pitch a tent or get an RV or a camper or something like that. But again, camping happens mostly outdoors. You're somewhat isolated. You're with people that you've already been spending time with anyways. So yes, camping, less risky than all of them. Man, I've not been camping in forever. This could be the time. Thank you so much for stopping by the show today. I hope you enjoyed it. Please show your support by hitting the like button. And check out yesterday's episode. I've got it linked over here. This is Tony for the Lido Loca Cruise Show. And until the next time, we'll see you on the Lido.